Do you know who that is?
She gasped. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The room went silent. Not the polite, momentary pause of a social hiccup. A complete, suffocating silence. The kind that falls when something unthinkable has just happened and no one knows yet how badly it will end. Adaeze looked up from the wine-stained jacket and met the man's eyes for the first time. He was Korean. Tall. Somewhere in his mid-30s. Dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire research stipend. His face was angular and still. The kind of stillness that didn't come from peace, but from absolute, practiced control. He was looking at her the way a man looks at something unexpected. Not with anger. With calculation. He reached into his breast pocket, withdrew a white pocket square, and began dabbing his sleeve without a word. Adaeze's ears started catching the whispers around her. Does she know who that is? Someone get security. That's Chairman Parks. Who let her near him? She opened her mouth to apologize again. To offer to pay for dry cleaning. To say anything that would dissolve the weight of every stare in that chandelier-lit room pressing down on her like a physical thing. She was a doctoral candidate in international trade policy. She had been invited to this gala by her university's Korean exchange liaison as a networking opportunity. She did not belong to whatever world these people were whispering about. She did not know this man. She had simply turned at the wrong moment. I'm truly sorry, she started. I'll pay for. 3 men walked into the ballroom. They weren't guests. Adaeze knew that immediately. Their suits were wrong, too stiff, too deliberate, like uniforms wearing a costume. They moved without champagne glasses, without small talk, without the relaxed drift of people who had arrived to enjoy themselves. They were scanning. Methodically. Face by face. Corner by corner. The first one spoke into an earpiece. The second one posted himself at the main entrance. The third one began moving through the crowd. The man beside her went still in a different way. It was subtle, a fraction of a degree of tension across his jaw. A slight shift in how he held his shoulders. If she hadn't been standing close enough to feel the warmth of his arm, she wouldn't have caught it. But she did. And in the same breath that she caught it, she watched his eyes move, quick, precise, assessing the room like a man running calculations she couldn't see. Then he looked at her. And something in his expression changed. He reached out and took her hand. Firmly. Deliberately. Like he had done it 1,000 times before. Everyone. His voice carried across the room without being raised. A voice that expected silence and received it instantly. I'd like you to meet someone. He turned so that his body angled toward her, his hand still holding hers, his eyes on the crowd. My girlfriend. The silence changed texture. The whispers were different now, sharper, more confused, spreading outward like rings on water. Adaeze stared at him. I'm not. His thumb pressed into the back of her hand. Hard enough to communicate. Urgent enough to stop her words. He leaned down slightly, bringing his mouth close to her ear, his voice dropping to barely a breath. Play along if you want to leave this building alive. If you love intense Afro-Korean mafia romance, powerful forbidden love, dangerous men, and women who refuse to be swallowed by the darkness around them, you are in exactly the right place. Subscribe to ONL Afro-Korean Romance right now, like this video, and share it with every romance lover you know. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from and what part of this story already has you hooked, because we are just getting started. Adaeze smiled. It was the most difficult thing she had ever done in her life. Every instinct she had was screaming, at the absurdity, at the danger she didn't fully understand yet, at the warm pressure of a stranger's hand locked around hers in front of 300 people. But she looked at those men still moving through the crowd, still scanning, and she smiled. The night continued. Music returned. Waiters circulated. Conversations resumed. But she felt him beside her like a live current. For 40 minutes, he did not let go of her hand. He introduced her to 2 ambassadors, a shipping magnate, and a woman who ran what he described as cultural investments, but whose eyes were the coldest Adaeze had ever seen. At each introduction, Adaeze nodded, smiled, gave her name. Adaeze Okafor, doctoral candidate, University of Lagos/Seoul National University Exchange Program. and felt the weight of his presence absorbing all the questions those people wanted to ask. The three men left the ballroom without finding what they were looking for. 20 minutes later, Jaemin guided her through a side corridor and out through a service exit to the cool Seoul night. She pulled her hand free the moment the door closed behind them. "Who are you?" she said. It wasn't quite a question. It came out like an accusation. "Park Jaemin." He straightened his jacket cuffs with the same unhurried precision he'd used to clean the wine from his sleeve. "Corporate strategy. Publicly. And privately?" He looked at her steadily. "Privately, I'm someone whose name means that certain people won't touch what belongs to him." "I don't belong to you." "No." He said it simply, without apology. "But for the last 40 minutes, those men in there believed you did. Which is why you're standing outside breathing fresh air, instead of being escorted somewhere far less comfortable." Adaeze stared at him. The Han River glittered in the distance. Somewhere below them, Seoul hummed its enormous, indifferent hum. She was 26 years old, 8 months into her exchange program, writing a dissertation on trade asymmetries between West Africa and East Asia. She did not have enemies. She did not have secrets. She did not understand a single thing that had happened in the last hour. "Why were they looking for me?" she said. "They weren't looking for you specifically." He paused. "They were looking for whoever was carrying something. And you match a description that was circulated 2 days ago." "What description?" "Nigerian woman. Academic. Early to mid-20s. Seen in the vicinity of a particular tech office building on Tehran Aro last Thursday." Adeeze's stomach dropped. "I was at that building. My university has a partnership with." "I know." He was watching her carefully now, reading her the way she had noticed him reading the room inside. "That partnership is not why they're interested in you. Someone else was in that building the same day. Someone who took something that doesn't belong to them." "I don't know anything about that." "I believe you." She searched his face for the lie and couldn't find one. That unsettled her more than anything else. "Then why are they?" "Because they don't know that. And because finding the wrong person and persuading them to talk is considered acceptable collateral in certain circles." He held her gaze. "Do you understand what I'm telling you?" She understood. The specific, cold clarity of it settled over her like a hand pressing down on her shoulders. "So what happens now?" she said quietly. "Now," he said, "I have a proposal." They sat in the back of his car, a blacked-out Genesis with privacy glass and a driver who apparently operated on the principle that conversations in the back seat were not his business. The city moved past outside. Adaeze sat with her clutch in her lap and her hands folded over it like a woman bracing herself. Jaemin spoke without preamble. "A temporary arrangement. 3 weeks, possibly 4. You appear publicly as my companion. You stay in my residence. You attend 2 or 3 scheduled events. In return, my name surrounds you like a wall, and no one in any network connected to last Thursday's incident will approach you. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend. I want you to be safe." He said it plainly. "The pretense is the mechanism." "And why would you do this for a stranger?" Something moved across his face. Brief. Contained. "You're a graduate student who happened to be in the wrong building on the wrong day. You have no involvement in what was taken and no way to defend yourself against people who won't listen to that." He looked out the window. "I don't find that acceptable." "That's not an answer." He was quiet for a moment. "No," he said. "It isn't." She studied his profile in the passing light. The clean line of his jaw, the composed set of his expression, the way he held himself like a man who had learned very early that stillness was armor. "If I say no," she asked, "then I have my driver take you home, and I recommend you contact your university liaison first thing in the morning and request emergency relocation to a different district." He looked at her. "It won't be enough. But it's what you'll have." Adaeze looked down at her hands. She thought about her apartment, the small one-bedroom she shared with her roommate Chioma, who had been traveling for the past 2 weeks. She thought about the academic building she walked through every morning, the coffee shop on the corner, the subway route she had memorized. She thought about how ordinary and exposed all of it suddenly felt. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A message in English, stark and short. You have something that belongs to us. Return it and this ends quietly. Her fingers went cold. She looked up at Jaemin. He hadn't seen the message, but he read her face with the precision of a man who had spent years interpreting the expressions of people trying to hide fear. All right, Adaeze said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. What are your conditions? He laid them out cleanly. 3 conditions, no negotiation. First, public appearances. Minimum twice weekly. She would be seen with him at events where his presence was a statement. She would behave as his partner, attentive, comfortable, not performing but present. Second, residence. She would move into the upper floor of his penthouse immediately. Her building was already known. His was not accessible. Third, silence. Whatever she saw, heard, or observed within his household and business circle, she would not ask about and would not discuss outside. Not with her roommate, not with her university liaison, not with her family. That's a lot to ask of someone you've known for 90 minutes, Adaeze said. Yes, he agreed. And the first condition, appearing as your partner. What does that mean practically? It means we are convincing in public. Comfortable proximity. Eye contact. The kind of ease that takes time to develop, which we will need to approximate quickly. She looked at him for a long moment. Are you always this clinical about everything? Something shifted in his eyes. Not quite amusement. The echo of it. Are you always this direct? In Lagos, it's called survival. She held his gaze. In academia, it's called methodology. This time the shift in his expression was unmistakable. A fractional softening at the corner of his mouth that was probably the closest thing Park Jaemin had to a smile in formal situations. I can work with methodology, he said. She sent Chioma a message that night saying she was staying with a colleague from the exchange program. She packed a bag from her apartment with the efficiency of someone who didn't allow herself to think too carefully about what she was doing. She stood in her small bedroom for exactly 30 seconds, looking at Chioma's closed door, at the stack of books on the shared dining table, at the old laptop Chioma had left charging on the kitchen counter. The one she always forgot to take on trips. Then she walked out and got back into the waiting car. The penthouse was on the 38th floor of a building in Gangnam that had no signage at street level, and a lobby that required biometric access. Adaeze stepped out of the elevator and stopped. It wasn't opulence in the way she had expected. No gold fixtures, no aggressive displays of wealth. It was precision. Clean lines, dark wood, museum-quality art placed with the kind of deliberate spacing that communicated restraint rather than abundance. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 walls. The lights of Seoul spread below like a second sky. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side corridor. She bowed slightly to Jaemin, then to Adaeze. Ms. Han will prepare the East guest suite, Jaemin said. Whatever you need she will arrange. I don't need much, Adaeze said. You'll need more than you think. He glanced at her small overnight bag. There will be events. A stylist will come tomorrow. He read her expression accurately. It is not an insult. It is logistics. I brought my own clothes. You'll keep your own clothes. You'll also have access to whatever else is needed for appearances. He paused. I'm not trying to change you, Adaeze. I'm trying to make this convincing. It was the first time he had used her name. It landed differently than she expected. Ms. Han led her to the East Suite. A room larger than her entire apartment, with a rainfall shower and a view that made her chest ache with something that wasn't quite longing and wasn't quite fear. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time after the door closed, listening to the silence of a home that felt like a held breath, and tried to understand what she had just walked into. 3 days passed. She established a rhythm. Mornings she worked at a writing desk in the East Suite. Her dissertation notes, her data sets, the analysis she had promised her thesis supervisor by month's end. Jaemin was absent most of the day, present in the evenings. They ate dinner together twice, both times with the careful civility of people who are aware they are learning each other. He did not flirt. He did not crowd her space. He asked questions about her research with what appeared to be genuine curiosity, and he listened to her answers in the complete, unhurried way that very few people, men especially, ever actually listened. He told her nothing about his business, and she honored the condition, and did not ask. But she noticed things. The phone calls he stepped away to take, voice low and flat. The security detail that shifted composition every 48 hours. The way certain staff members delivered files without making eye contact. The tension that gathered in the set of his shoulders on the third day, and didn't fully release. She noticed that he had a shelf of books in the common room that included 3 titles on African economic history, one of which was a text she had cited in her own dissertation. She noticed that he drank his coffee at the window every morning at 6:15, looking at the city with the expression of a man holding something heavy that he has learned not to put down. She noticed that when he looked at her, really looked at her, the full, unguarded attention of it, something in the room changed temperature. She filed all of it away and returned to her dissertation and told herself that noticing things was simply what researchers did. On the 4th day, a car arrived to take them to the On Foundation charity gala at the Shilla Hotel. She wore a deep green silk dress that the stylist had selected with a quiet confidence Adaeze found herself trusting against her will. She stood at the penthouse entrance waiting. And when Jaemin came down the stairs in a black suit and paused at the sight of her, she registered the pause, categorized it, and moved briskly past it. "Ready," he said. "I'm never going to be ready," she said honestly. "But I'm prepared." The almost smile again. Fractional and involuntary and oddly reassuring. In the car he briefed her. Who would be there? Who would speak to them? What lines of conversation to avoid? He was thorough and concise, the way someone briefs a partner before a complicated meeting, not a companion before a party. "Chairman Park," she said, echoing the title she'd heard whispered at the first gala. "Is that what people call you?" "In certain circles. But you're not actually a chairman of anything public." He looked at her. "I'm a board member of 4 legitimate companies and a strategic consultant to several others." That's a very clean answer. It's an accurate answer. It's also not what I asked. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "My family holds positions in certain networks. My function within those networks is strategy, analysis. I don't manage operations." His voice was measured, like each word was being weighed before release. "I'm not going to explain the full architecture to you, Adaeze. But I want you to understand that what I do is not." He stopped. Started again. "I maintain lines that others don't." "Lines," she repeated. "Boundaries," he said. "Between what is necessary and what is unacceptable." She looked at his profile in the car's dark interior, and thought that this was probably the most honest thing he had said to her yet, and also that it told her almost nothing at all, and also that she believed him completely, which frightened her more than any of the rest of it. The charity gala hit them like a wave. Cameras first, not press, but the personal kind, phones rising discreetly as they entered together. Then the murmur. Then the undisguised staring. "Chairman Park has a girlfriend?" "Who is she?" "He's Nigerian," someone said. "They look." Jaemin moved through the room the way he did everything, with a particular unhurried gravity that parted the crowd without demanding it. Adaeze moved beside him and used every lesson she had ever learned about performing composure in environments that wanted to devour you. She had grown up as the daughter of a Lagos businesswoman. She had attended conferences in Geneva at 23. She was not, she reminded herself, someone who was easily swallowed. She was fine until the man in the silver tie appeared at Jaemin's elbow. He was in his late 50s, beautifully dressed, with the smile of a man who had long ago made friends with cruelty. He greeted Jaemin warmly, the warmth of old alliance, complicated and performative. Then he looked at Adaeze. "How interesting," he said in English, his eyes moving over her with the laziness of someone who considered thorough assessment to be a courtesy they were extending. "A foreign companion. How cosmopolitan of you, Jaemin." "Dr. O." Jaemin's voice was level. "And where is she from exactly?" The man addressed Jaemin, as though Adaeze were a piece of furniture that had been brought in for the evening. Adaeze opened her mouth. Jaemin spoke first. "She is from wherever she chooses to be." His voice didn't rise. It didn't harden. It simply became immovable. The conversational equivalent of a door swinging shut on a vault. "And my personal life, Dr. O, is not open for your commentary or anyone else's." Dr. O's smile didn't waver. But his eyes did. "Of course," he said smoothly and drifted away. The nearest cluster of guests had heard every word. Adaeze felt the ripple move through the room like a frequency shift. She kept her expression composed and her posture perfect, and did not reach for Jaemin's arm, even though every nerve in her body was suddenly, bewilderingly aware of how close he was standing. A few minutes later, in a quiet alcove near the bar, she said quietly, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I can handle condescension. I've had practice." "That's not why I did it." He glanced at her. There was something uncharacteristically unguarded in his expression for a fraction of a second. Something that looked almost like anger, though quiet and controlled and turned inward. A man like Dr. O reads silence as permission. "I have no interest in giving him any." Adaeze looked at him for a moment too long. "Thank you," she said finally. He nodded once and looked back at the room, and the guarded expression returned. And she told herself that the warmth spreading through her chest was simply gratitude and nothing more complicated than that. They returned to the penthouse at 11. Adaeze changed out of the green silk dress and made herself tea and sat at her writing desk, but she didn't open her dissertation. She sat looking at the Seoul lights and thinking about what Jaemin had said in the car. About the lines he maintained, about the things he kept and the things he refused. She thought about Chioma. It had been almost 2 weeks since Chioma had left for what she'd described as a quick trip to Busan for a photography workshop. She hadn't responded to messages in 4 days. Adaeze had told herself it was spotty reception. Or Chioma being Chioma. Impulsive and communicatively unreliable in the way of people who lived very fully in each present moment. But now, sitting in this penthouse with a crime network's attention on her back, she thought about the way Chioma had been acting the week before she left. Distracted. Nervous in small ways. Protective of her laptop. Adaeze looked across the suite at Chioma's old laptop on the table. She had brought it without thinking. It had been in her bag already. She'd grabbed it by habit when she'd packed. She pulled it open. Chioma had trusted her with the password years ago, back in Lagos. It still worked. The desktop was cluttered. Chioma's photographs everywhere, research folders, draft emails, and Adaeze almost closed it again. But something made her pause. A folder she didn't recognize, sitting at the corner of the screen with a name that was just a string of numbers. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't. She looked. The folder required a secondary password. She tried 3 of Chioma's standard ones. The third worked. Inside, 11 files. Formatted not like photographs or documents but like data exports. Dense, structured, clearly not Chioma's own work. Adaze's background was trade policy and financial systems. She understood what she was looking at within 4 minutes. They were corporate financial records. Transactions. Internal memos. A paper trail of extraordinary precision documenting what appeared to be a sophisticated multi-year scheme. Shell company routing, fabricated contracts, board-level fund diversification that went somewhere it had never been authorized to go. The company at the center of it was a Korean tech and infrastructure firm. The beneficiary structure pointed toward a single individual. Adaze's hands stopped moving on the trackpad. She read the name 3 times to make sure she had not misread it. Park Sung-jin. She didn't know that name. But she had learned, in 4 days of living in Jaemin's penthouse and paying quiet attention, one structural fact about the Park family. The eldest of the previous generation. The man who held the foundational authority in whatever network Jaemin was part of. The name spoken with a particular careful weight by the staff when they thought she wasn't listening. Was Jaemin's uncle. She closed the laptop. Opened it again. Closed it. She stood up and walked to the window and stood there for a long time looking at the city, breathing carefully. Chioma hadn't stumbled into this randomly. Chioma had found these files and taken them for a reason. Either she understood what she had, or someone had asked her to retrieve them. Either way, she had disappeared immediately after. And the message on Adaze's phone, "You have something that belongs to us," hadn't been a threat from Jaemin's enemies. It had been a threat from his family. The people hunting Adaeze for the files were not rivals of the Park network. They were the Park network. She didn't sleep. By 5 a.m. she had made a decision. The decision felt like stepping off a ledge, but the alternative, staying silent inside the home of a man whose family might be the threat, felt like a different kind of fall, longer and less honest. At 6:10 she was sitting in the common room when Jaemin came down the stairs for his morning coffee. He stopped when he saw her. Read her face. What happened, he said. She looked at him for a long moment. He was still and watchful. The same composed surface, but she had spent 4 days learning that the surface wasn't the man, and that the man was paying far closer attention than the surface advertised. She put the laptop on the table between them. I found something, she said. And you need to tell me the truth about whether you already knew. He sat across from her and looked at the files without touching the laptop. His expression didn't change. That she was beginning to learn meant something was happening underneath that he was working hard to manage. Park Sungjin, she said. Your uncle? Yes. These records go back 6 years. The routing through Cayman subsidiaries is, whoever structured this was sophisticated. This isn't opportunistic. This is systematic. Yes, he said again. Quieter. Did you know? The pause was exactly 3 seconds. She counted. I had suspicions, he said. 4 months ago I began to see inconsistencies in certain figures that passed through my review. I flagged them internally. His jaw tightened. The flags were buried. By your uncle. By people answerable to my uncle. Yes. He finally looked up from the laptop. I did not know the full scope of it. Not like this. Something crossed his face, controlled, but real. Where did your roommate get these? I don't know. She was working some kind of, she does photography but she freelances. Research support work. Someone may have hired her to retrieve them. Or she may have stumbled onto them on her own. Adaeze pressed her fingers flat on the table. She's been missing for 2 weeks, Jaemin. The use of his name, her first time using it directly, registered on his face the way the almost smile always did. Small. Involuntary. I know, he said. She stared at him. What do you mean you know? I know she's in Busan. She's safe. She went to ground on her own. Whoever she's working with has resources enough to hide her. His eyes were steady on hers. I've known about her since the day you told me her name. I didn't tell you because I didn't have the full picture yet. The anger arrived cleanly without warning, like a door swinging open. You knew my roommate was involved and you didn't tell me. I knew she was connected. The nature of the connection. You should have told me. Her voice was steady but there was iron under it. You brought me here under the premise that I was in danger through proximity to something I didn't understand. And you knew more than you told me. That is not the arrangement we agreed to. He didn't look away. He didn't offer a deflection. He said, you're right. 2 words. Direct and complete and entirely without qualification. Some of the anger shifted. Not dissolved. She was not someone whose anger dissolved easily, but reconfigured. What do these files mean? She said. Practically. For your family. For whoever is hunting them. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had a different quality, stripped of the corporate composure, more careful, more real. My uncle has been using the organization's infrastructure to route funds for a competitor network operating in Southeast Asia. What looks like misappropriation is actually active collaboration with a rival. If this becomes known to the family council, he stopped. It won't be treated as a financial crime. It will be treated as a betrayal of the highest category. And Sungjin knows these files exist. He's known for weeks. The people looking for you, looking for whoever carried the files out of that building, are operating under his direct authority, not the family's authority, his. Adaeze sat with that for a moment. So if your family council saw these files, she said slowly, it would destroy your uncle. But if your uncle finds these files first, he destroys the evidence. And whoever held it. The word whoever settled between them with a weight that didn't need elaborating. This is bigger than a protection arrangement, she said. Yes. What you're actually sitting on is evidence that could collapse the power structure of your entire family network. Yes. She looked at him across the table. The Seoul dawn was beginning outside, gray and silver, the city waking up below them. He looked tired in a way that she hadn't seen on him before. Not physically tired, but the particular tiredness of someone who has been carrying a weight alone for a long time. Why haven't you used them yourself? She asked. If you've suspected your uncle for months, why not go to the family council directly? He looked at her with an expression she couldn't fully read. Then he said, because my uncle raised me. After my parents died, he was the one who, he stopped, set his coffee cup down. Exposing him would be the right thing. I know it's the right thing. I've known it for months. His voice remained level, but the fractures in it were audible now. If you were listening, knowing something and being able to do it are not always the same distance apart. Adaeze was quiet for a moment. I know, she said. And she did. The specific way that love and obligation could create a paralysis that pure logic couldn't touch. She thought about her own father, about complicated loyalties, about the impossible mathematics of caring for someone whose actions you couldn't defend. He looked at her. It was a different look than any he had given her before, direct and unguarded, the full weight of it landing without the usual controlled management. I'm sorry, he said, for not telling you everything from the beginning. Don't apologize, she said. Just don't do it again. The corner of his mouth moved. The almost smile. Methodology, he said quietly. Exactly. That night was the first time they talked past midnight. It began practically, logistics, options, what to do with the files, whether Adaeze could contact her university without triggering Sungjin's surveillance. But somewhere around 11, the conversation changed shape. The way it sometimes does between two people who have been holding themselves at a careful professional distance and suddenly, in the dark and quiet, forget to maintain the effort of it. She told him about Lagos, about growing up the daughter of a woman who had built a business in a city that didn't always make space for women who were building things, about the specific education of watching your mother negotiate, endure, outlast, win, and the particular kind of strength that produced, and also the particular kind of loneliness, because strength performed too consistently can become a room you can't leave. He listened the way he always listened, complete, unhurried, without filling the silences with his own noise. You know what I find strange about you, she said. He raised an eyebrow. You listen like someone who was taught to, intentionally, like someone decided at some point that listening was a skill worth the effort. Something moved in his face. My mother, he said simply. She said the most dangerous man in any room was the one who never spoke, because he had heard everything. Is that why you're so quiet? I'm quiet because I learned early that most of what people say tells you less than how they hold themselves when they don't think anyone is looking. He looked at her directly. You, for instance. What about me? You hold yourself like someone prepared for resistance. Like you've spent so long ready to be underestimated that it's become your default posture. He paused. But when you're thinking, really thinking, working through a problem, you lean forward. And all of it drops. The preparation. The armor. You're just, he stopped. Just what? A beat. Present, he said. Completely present. The silence after that was different from the silences before it. Adaeze looked at her tea. She thought about the conditions he had proposed in the car that first night. Public appearances, no personal questions, proximity without intimacy, and how those conditions had made perfect, clean sense 96 hours ago. And how, right now, in the lamplight of his common room with Seoul quiet below them, they felt like a fence with a gate that had been drifting open by degrees. This arrangement, she said carefully. Yes, he said. The word had a weight of acknowledgement in it, as though he had been waiting for her to approach this particular edge. The lines between what's real and what's performance are blurring, he said quietly. Yes, I'm aware. She looked at him. What do we do with that? She said. He was quiet for a long moment. Long enough that she could hear the city breathing 38 floors below. I think, he said finally, we don't make a decision about it tonight. She nodded slowly. It was, she recognized, probably the wisest thing either of them could have said. It was also not the same as saying nothing had changed. And they both knew it. She went to bed at 12:30. At 2:17, she was jolted awake by the sound of quick footsteps in the corridor outside her suite. Then voices, low, rapid, urgent. The particular cadence of men receiving bad information. She opened her door. 3 of the security detail were in the hallway. Jaemin was standing among them, already dressed, his phone at his ear. His face had closed back to its full operational composure. The version of him that she had met first, at the gala, impenetrable and calculating. But his eyes found her immediately when her door opened. "Go back inside," he said. "What happened?" His jaw was tight. "Adaeze. What happened?" One of the security men stepped forward, and she simply looked at him and he stopped. And she was faintly aware that she was becoming someone who could do that now. Simply by virtue of 3 weeks' proximity to a man whose authority she had apparently begun to absorb by osmosis. Jaemin made a decision. She could see it happen, a rapid internal recalculation, the same process she had watched him run that very first night in the ballroom. "Someone inside gave information," he said. "The location of the files. Your presence here. To someone outside." "Outside the building?" "A beat. Outside the family," he said. She understood what that meant in the space before the next sentence. Outside the family meant to Sungjin's people. But Sungjin was inside the family. So outside the family meant, "Someone told your uncle's rivals," she said. "About the files." "About you. About the files." "About," he stopped. The security man's earpiece crackled. He turned away for 3 seconds. When he turned back, his expression had changed in a way that she had never seen on him before. Controlled, still, but under it something that was not anger and not fear but both at the same moment. "There is a request being forwarded through the Family Council's emergency communication channel," he said. "Formally submitted within the past hour." "A request for what?" His eyes held hers. "For you to be handed over to the council's custody for questioning." He paused. The submission was made under the standing authority of the network's senior advisory position. She heard it before he said the name, felt the shape of it arriving like weather. "The request was submitted by my uncle," Jaemin said. And behind him, one of the security men pressed his earpiece and said something in fast, urgent Korean, and Jaemin's face went very still, and Adaeze understood that they were standing at the exact edge of something neither of them could come back from. The city glittered below them, 38 floors of distance between their world and the rest of Seoul's ordinary, unknowing life. And Adaeze thought about the laptop with its files. About Chioma and Busan. About a man who maintained lines others wouldn't. About evidence that could detonate a family. About the particular calculus of a moment when protection runs out, and all that's left is choice. She looked at Park Jaemin. And she said, "What do we do now?" To be continued in episode 2. If this story already has you gripped, and I know it does, subscribe to Oyanel AfroKorean Romance right now. Hit the like button and share this video with every romance fan you know, because episode 2 is coming and you do not want to be the person who missed it. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from and what moment in this episode stopped your heart. Was it the gala? The files? That midnight conversation? Or that final knock on the door? I want to know. I read every single one. See you in episode 2.